Hello everybody, this is Kate again from the Centennial Park Branch Library. Welcome to the Huichoi Beaded Earring tutorial for how to make the bottom half of the petals for the large flower and then tie off the tail end of the thread. So those are the two things we're going to do in this tutorial. So let me show you. So in the previous tutorial, you learned how to make this yellow center circle of the Huichoi flowers, which is the same for both the large and the small flowers. In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to make the bottom half of the petals and then tie off the tail end of our thread. All right, so let me show you. So here you can see in the large flower the yellow center circle beads, and then the large flower has the petal is sewn in 2 rounds. So the first round you're going to add these 5 light blue beads around the circle for the bottom half of the petal. In the final tutorial you will learn how to add the top half of the petals, and you can see those 5 beads on the top half for the top of the petals. And that will complete your large flower. But in this tutorial, we are going to work on the light blue petal bottoms, and I will show you how that goes. All right. So in my beadwork, I typically stitch in a counterclockwise direction. I go right to left. It's just more comfortable for me. You can go in whatever direction is comfortable for you. The important thing when we're adding the petals is that you go in the opposite direction of your tail thread. So here's my tail thread, and I'm just going to kind of turn my beadwork over so that I'm going counterclockwise with my working thread to add the petals. And actually we're adding the light blue bottom half of the petals. So each petal is half is 5 beads. So I'm going to pick up 5 beads. All right, there's our 5 beads. And we are going to skip the bead that's closest to where our working thread is coming out of, right here. So we're going to skip this close bead here, and we're going to stitch through the next bead. And that's the way we're going to add all of these petal bottoms. And I think I'm going to wax my thread one more time here. It feels a little dry. Okay, so there is the first petal bottom. And now we are going to continue around the circle and add 5 more beads, 5 more of the light blue beads. We're going to skip this bead that's the closest to where our thread is exiting, as I drop beads all over. And then so we're going to skip this bead and we're going to go through the bead after it. And you can see when I pulled that one tight that the yellow center circle got a little bit pulled apart. And so to fix that, you just kind of pull the ends opposite each other and it'll tighten it back up. When we go to secure, the last thing we'll do in this tutorial is we'll secure this thread, and that will keep that center circle tight. Okay, so working around, we're going to add 5 more of our light blue beads. We're going to skip this bead that's the closest to where our thread is exiting and go through the next bead. And pull our circle tight again. Oop. All right, and we're going to add 5 more beads for our next petal bottom. Okay, so we're going to skip that closest bead, go through the next bead. And I always kind of shape the petals as I'm going, just to kind of get them started in the right direction. Alright, so adding 5 more beads. Skip that closest bead and go through the next bead. Alright, and you can see that the center circle is getting loose, so I'm going to kind of pull these together a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to kind of hold my tail end, my tail thread out of the way. I like to just put it between a couple other fingers to get it out of the way. Okay, so this is my last petal bottom. So skip the bead closest, go through the next bead. Okay, pull it tight. Alright, so there we have all of the light blue petal bottoms added, all of this little bottom half of the petals. Alright, at this point what we're going to do is we are going to go back and secure this tail thread so that this center circle stays tight. So go ahead and gently remove your needle from the working end of your thread, and we're going to put it on the tail end. So go ahead and thread the tail end of the thread with your needle. Oops. And sometimes with threading a needle, it just takes a couple times. There's no really good foolproof way to do it. There we go. All right. So we are ready to secure this tail end of the thread into the beadwork. So again, I'm going to pull the tail end and the working thread in opposite directions, and I'm going to sew through a couple of yellow beads. Just kind of pull the beads tight again, and now I'm going to make a half hitch knot. The way that you secure thread back into the beadwork so there's no tail ends showing is you go through a process where you sew through a couple of beads, you make a half hitch knot, you sew through a couple of beads, you make another half hitch knot. You want to have at least 2 to 3 half hitch knots to secure your thread, and the test is that if it looks really loose, or you can pull the thread out easily. Okay, so I'm going to make a half hitch knot. There's 3 steps to making a half hitch knot. You thread your needle, you sew underneath or go underneath 2 beads, and you're going underneath a thread bridge between 2 beads. So a thread bridge is the thread that is between 2 beads. So I'm just going to go under that thread bridge, and I'm going to pull my string or my thread through, but I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to leave a loop, and I'm going to sew back through that loop, and then I'm going to pull it tight, and that makes a half hitch knot. Okay, so I'm going to sew through a couple more beads. So when I sew through these next 2 beads and pull it tight, that pulls the knot up into the beads so it doesn't show. Okay, so I'm going to make another half hitch knot. I'm going to go under the thread bridge, and I'm going to make a loop, and I'm going to sew back through the loop and pull it tight. Alright, I'm going to sew through a couple more beads, and I'm going to make my 3rd and last half hitch knot. So I'm going to go under the thread bridge make a loop, sew back through the loop. Pull it tight. All right, and I'm going to sew through a couple more beads. Maybe go through a couple more, just so that stays nice and tight. Okay. Now I'm going to trim the remaining tail end of the thread. So I'm going to remove the needle. When you're trimming thread, you want to use what I call a pull-push method. So what that is that I'm going to pull up on the thread and I'm going to push down with my scissors. And what that does is it creates tension on the thread, and then when you trim the thread, it automatically kind of sucks back up into the beadwork and it won't show. So I'm going to pull up, push down. Be careful you don't trim the other thread that you want to keep. I've done that before. Okay, so we're going to pull up on this, push down with the scissors, and snip. All right, and there, now that is all ready now. You can see that that circle stays together nicely, the yellow center circle. So now we are ready to add the top half of the petals. All right, see you in a few minutes.